Hi. Well, it's so nice to be here. I, as always, wish we were on your beautiful campus, but you're right, we're making it work. Everyone's kind of getting used to this new normal. Um, so I work for, yes, Backstage Casting, and we have been around in the industry a long time. And when I was brought onto Backstage, one of the things I was really super passionate about was working with student filmmakers, and specifically getting student filmmakers to learn the process of casting and auditioning and putting professional talent in their work rather than hiring friends or roommates or classmates or whoever's kind of right at hand. I just think casting is such an important part of the production process, and the more you can wrap your head around that and start working with actors now, I think you're going to put yourself in a really good position for getting started with your career. So let me share my screen. One of the things that I want to walk through today, a couple things. First is some basics on casting, kind of what good casting looks like and how you find the best quality talent, especially when you're a student filmmaker and you may not have any money to pay actors on your film, or you may have very little money to pay actors, kind of what attracts an actor to one of those lower paid or unpaid roles. And then also, because we are in this new age of remote casting and virtual casting, walk you through some of the tools on the site that are going to make that a little easier for you. I think that, you know, it's in some ways lucky that we've been at this for 2 years, because we've all kind of figured out how to make virtual casting work in the best way that we can. And so while you guys are not able to do traditional in-person auditioning, I want to show you how to kind of recreate that in-person audition magic in the digital space as much as you can. So a couple things about the site right off the bat. If you've never cast via Backstage, you don't have an account, the most important thing for you to know is that we've got two sides to the site. So there's our actor side, and our actors pay a flat monthly fee to be part of the site. That fee lets them build out a full profile, but they pay monthly. Our filmmaker accounts are free. So that's the most important thing. If you're signing up for your account for the first time, make sure that you're signing up for that free filmmaker account. And actually, they've made this much easier to find. When you log into the site for the first time, you'll see this banner across the top. And if you click on Backstage 4, it'll give you the option to click on to finding talent rather than signing up for that actor account. So don't pay for the actor account if you don't need it. This is what that drop down will look like. You'll see kind of finding jobs. And if you are an actor, a voice performer, or crew, you want to start over here with the finding talent so that you're not paying that monthly fee. And then you'll be able to fill out all of this great information about yourself. The question I always get from students is, when it comes to company name and company website, you know, what do you list there? And the best thing for you to do is list the school, because most of your productions while you're a student at LMU are going to be kind of under that school umbrella. So that's a great place to start. Okay, a couple things about getting started with casting. In my experience, casting kind of breaks down very neatly into three kind of chunks, right? Three big steps. I think casting can seem really intimidating, but like all aspects of production, the more you break it down into its component parts, the more manageable it gets. So let's start with the first step of casting, which is putting out a really great breakdown. You're going to hear this called a million different things depending on which casting platform you use. We call them casting notices, but you'll also hear these called breakdowns, or audition notices, or casting calls, or yeah, there's a million different things that these are called. It all means the same thing. They're the information that you as a filmmaker are putting out about your film, and the goal of this step is to get lots of good actors to apply so that you have good creative choices to make down the road. If you put out a casting notice that's sort of halfway completed, often you get a handful of submissions anyway, but none of them are really good choices. And like so much else in production, this is about making good creative choices. So a couple of things to keep in mind at the start is that your casting notice is an actor-facing document. You're going to fill this in for us to review at Backstage. We review every notice that hits the site just to protect our actor members. But at the end of the day, this document is for your actors. And so I think thinking through your characters and your story as it applies to the actors that are going to help you build that world out, that's going to help you put together a casting notice that's really efficient and effective in finding really good talent. The second thing to think through is it's very easy as a filmmaker to get stuck on a physical description of your characters. I have this exact same experience in my own work. You start to picture a character a specific way. And my general rule of thumb for you is that the more you can walk away from physical descriptors, the better experience you're going to have casting. Often an actor will walk into your auditions and they won't look the way you're picturing the character in your head, but they're going to bring you something valuable via their performance. And I would always rather have that on my sets than an actor who maybe looks the specific way that I'm picturing the character. Now, obviously, there are lots of exceptions to this rule. I think if your character needs to look a specific way for the story to function, awesome. There's lots of good options on the site to get specific about physical description. I just think the more you can leave things like ethnicity, even to a certain extent, which for some characters, things like gender open, you're going to have actors who come in who bring something valuable for their performance that you're not necessarily going to see from someone who may match a very narrow physical description. And then the last thing to think about is there are things that apply to your student films that make casting harder. Very young children, stunt performers, things like nudity. And for Backstage, we consider nudity anything from like a bathing suit down. I'm not saying never ever cast for those things. I just think if you know that you're going to have something very specific you're looking for. I'm helping a student right now at a different school who's looking for kids between 8 and 11 who are fluent in Vietnamese who live in the LA area, which is, you know, a smaller pool of people. Just know that if that's you, if you're looking for something very specific, very young children, you're going to require nudity, the casting process is going to take you a little bit longer. So you need to factor that time in, time for me to help you, time for you to reach out to more actor resources, whatever that looks like, just make sure you're building that into your timeline. So let's talk a little bit about your casting notice in specific. This is what the casting notice form looks like on Backstage. You're going to see the same sort of form on any of the casting platforms. A couple of things about this form that are going to give you a better experience casting by any site. First and foremost is to name your project. I cannot tell you how many casting notices I see that are untitled student film or untitled short film or even, you know, untitled big budget action feature that get very few responses from actors on the site. The actors want to apply to something that has a title. So even if that's going to change down the road, give yourself a name. It's going to give you a better experience on the site. The second thing is, like I said, think through this form like the actors who are applying for you. The big thing that I always hear questions about is compensation. If you're not paying actors because you're using the student film agreement or you just don't have it in your budget to pay actors, what goes in that compensation box? And the phrase that you need to memorize, if that's you, is meals, copy, and credit. That's what you're going to say to actors when they apply for your project if you're not paying your actors on your project. So meals, copy, and credit. And all that means is that meals mean that your actors are going to get fed on set. Usually every 4 hours, everybody takes a break and you provide a meal for your actors. If they're going to be on set for less than 4 actors, they're really just showing up to do a very quick scene. We do recommend that you even just provide things like snacks and water and coffee. I think of meals also as your promise that you're going to run a professional set for your actors. They're going to have a good experience, somewhere to sit down, somewhere to get out of the sun, somewhere to, you know, find things like water and bathrooms. Meals is kind of your overall promise about your experience with the actors on set. Copy means that they're going to get a copy of the footage for their reels, and this is the big one. This is why actors will do an unpaid job or a very low paid job, is because they're trying to fill out their reel. They want different kinds of experiences, different kinds of footage. So where this becomes important in your casting notice, when the copy is something that's valuable to your actors, is your production description and your role description. You'll see those 2 boxes here on the form. This is where you're going to tell the actor, rather than a production description that, you know, maybe it's very accurate to say, my production is a 6-minute short film. It's not all that interesting to the actors. It doesn't tell them anything about the footage. So this is where your really great sentence or 2 log line goes. You're telling the actor what they're getting into, what the value is of that footage that they're walking away from. Same thing when it comes to their role description. You can dig a little bit more into this character in particular. Actors like to hear good descriptive language in both of these boxes because it tells them what kind of footage they're going to get. like I said, you've got lots of options on here about filling out, gender and age range and ethnicity. Like I said, the more open you can leave that, the better. The big thing is age. For characters, the general rule is that the younger your character is, the smaller that age range is, right? There's a huge difference between an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old. They look very different. There's a way smaller difference between a 40-year-old and a 45-year-old, or even a 50-year-old, right? So the older your characters get, the more wiggle room you have when it comes to age range, which again will give you more options from the actors. Now, the last thing that the actors are looking for is credit. So meal, copy, and credit. And the big thing for you here, the easiest way to make your project more valuable for the actors is to give your characters names. Things like man number 3 are not ultimately all that valuable to an actor. When I'm working with the casting office and an actor applies to one of our roles and they've got man number 3 all over their resume, or things like cop or nurse or pizza guy, those kind of things on their resume tell us in the casting office that this is an actor who's doing a lot of acting in these projects, right? The better thing to do is to give all of your characters a name, even if it's just a first name. Jamie is going to be more valuable on a resume than man number 3. Does that make sense? Okay, see a nod, so I'm going to keep moving. So that's putting together your casting notice, thinking through that meals, copy, and credit, and what that means to your actors in the notice itself. When it comes to the practical information in this form, things like shoot dates or audition dates, if you don't know that, I know sometimes your production schedules can be flexible, especially right now with COVID. One of the things that you can do is just put TBD, or shoots at the end of February, dates TBD. That's enough to get the casting process started. Now, when you get to the point of hiring actors, you want to know your specific dates. And if you know them up front, go ahead and put them in your casting notice. But don't let it hold up your whole process if you're just waiting on, specific dates. Same thing with locations. Don't ever put a specific address where you're shooting, because you don't want actors to be able to crash your shoot. You instead want to say, we're shooting in Los Angeles, we're shooting in Playa Vista, we're shooting in somewhere in Southern California, and we're still figuring that out. So that's putting together this form. I think it's not nearly as intimidating as it can look. The most important thing for you to know, if you write down nothing else, well, I'll come back to this page, is that we charge a $25 fee to use the casting notice, but you as a loyal Marymount student will never have to pay that fee. So we don't want to take away from your budget. We don't want to keep you from casting actors. So if you write down nothing else I say, the promo code LMUcast, and you'll see it on screen here, covers the full cost of your casting notices when you post on Backstage. And the way that it works is that you'll fill out that whole form. It will take you over here to the payment page, and you'll just pop it in that promo code box and hit apply, and it will zero out the full cost. You don't need to put your credit card information in, and you don't need to pay any sort of additional fee. The nice thing about that code is that it works every time you use it, and you can use it as often as you need it. Obviously, we want you to use it for anything that you're shooting for the program or for class, but also we know that film students are never just working on the projects that they're working on for class. So anything else that you're working on, go ahead and use that promo code for it too. Just be clear in your casting notice itself if it is a student film, like it's something you're turning in as part of the program, or if it's something you're working on the side. Coming back up to this page, so there's 2 new options on the site, especially when you're posting a casting notice. The first is that you can post for voiceover jobs. I normally only cover this with animation students, but I've found in the last year that film students are using voice actors in really interesting ways, because voice actors can be done remotely. So it's a great, super safe way to kind of fold more talent into your film. So I want to cover it really briefly. So the thing about voice casting, the whole process works very, very similarly. The big thing to know is when you're filling out this form on Backstage and you've specifically said voice actors instead of on-screen actors, is that we obviously ditch things in the casting notice like height or hair color, because who cares, it's for voiceover. And instead you get choices like accents, dialects, languages spoken, so that you can really dial into the kind of voice you need. If you've never cast for voiceover, the most important thing for you to know is that when we talk about age range and to a certain extent gender and voiceover casting, we're specifically talking about the character. Voice actors throw their voices in all kinds of super interesting ways, so just don't be shocked when you put up something for an 8-year-old child character in your project and actors well into their adulthood or the opposite gender apply. Totally normal in voice casting. It's because they can throw their voice in that specific way. The other thing to know is that if you're looking to fill out your crew, I know often you guys are working each other's projects as crew, but if you need something specific, you can now post crew jobs on the site too. It works very similarly. You'll just tell us what you're looking for, enter that promo code, and you can look for lighting folks, post-production folks. We've got casting directors on the site. We've got all kinds of great folks. This is what their profiles will look like. They can tell you what technology they're comfortable with, not just that they're a cinematographer, but they can say, these are the cameras that I've worked with in the past. This is the kind of project I've shot in the past. This is the kind of post-production I've done in the past. So you can really dial into what you're needing, and you can post for a huge variety of kinds of talent just to make the production process work faster. So that's the first step of casting, is putting out your casting notice, starting to get responses from actors, interest from actors, so that you can start making some choices. I wanted to pause really briefly and see if anyone had any questions before we move on and jump into auditioning and what auditioning looks like right now. Anything pressing?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
I was just asking, you said like we provide them with a copy, like for the footage, like how you provide just an online link or like a hard drive, like how you do that?
Online link is just fine. That's a great question. I get this a lot from film students thinking they have to send all the footage you shoot that day to your actors. Your final project is fine. So what I would recommend for that is that when you turn in the project for class, you just also send a copy over to your actors. And whether that's an online link or a Dropbox link to the MP4, whatever works best for you, but you really just need to send them the final project. The only exception to that is if you've promised an actor, meals, copy, and credit when you hire them, and then occasionally what happens is that scene that actor's in no longer works in your project and you're going to edit it out entirely. So sending them the final project doesn't do anything for them because they're no longer in it, right? Does that make sense? That's the only time when I would take that scene that I edited out and it's, solo MP4 version and send that over to the actors. They still should have that footage, even if it's not going to wind up in your project itself, because you hired them kind of with the compensation of getting a copy of their scenes. Other than that, sending them the final project is fine. Actors are pretty adept these days at pulling the version of that they need and putting it into their reel. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Anything else?
We're LMU Cast, right? That's who we are.
Yes, LMU Cast is your promo code. And I will send over, Laura, this presentation as a PDF.
Okay.
And it's got all of the links are clickable and it's got their promo code in it so that they'll have it in PDF form for you too.
Sounds good. We'll put it in our handbook, you guys, like we always do.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Any other questions? All right, so let's talk about auditioning. This is kind of the big second step of casting. And it's my favorite. And I also think that it's the part where student filmmakers in particular get intimidated and kind of want to ditch out of the process and cast their roommate. So let's talk about what auditions look like and kind of how you set yourself up for success. The first thing is when you're looking through the actors who have applied, this is what your casting dashboard's going to look like on Backstage. Very easy to navigate, very easy to keep yourself organized. The big thing for starting the process of auditions is that you'll have the ability to add a collaborator to your process. So the way that works is you'll see it down here at the bottom. When you click on that, you can send someone an invite. They just need that same free filmmaker account. So if you need help, if you're a director also working with a producer as part of your team, or you're a producer who wants to loop in part of your other production team, whatever it looks like, right? If you need someone help setting up auditions, going through actors, add them as a collaborator and they can see the full process. This is incredibly important if you're going to host virtual auditions through the site. Anyone who's going to be in that audition room with you has to be added as a collaborator to the project. Otherwise, they're not going to have access to the audition room. So that's the first step, is adding your team into the mix. Second thing is making choices about actors. So a couple things to note about Backstage in particular. Like I said at the beginning, our actors are paying a flat monthly fee to be part of the site. And for that fee, they can add as many videos as they want. They can add headshots. They should have multiple headshot options. Sorry, I have the hiccups. They'll be able to add a voice reel for if you're doing voiceover casting, they'll have their resume on there. All of that is included under that fee, which means for you as a filmmaker, you should be looking for actors who have a full, well filled out profile. If you run into an actor with one photo and zero additional information, you know, there are sites that charge actors per picture or charge actors per minute of their video that they add. When I'm working on those sites, I don't think about this so much, but for Backstage in particular, I don't want to have an actor in my audition room unless I get a sense of who they are as a performer. So look for people with well filled out profiles. Second thing is you've got lots and lots of sorting tools here of how to sort through your actors. I love this screenshot because it indicates something that has happened to me on every single project I've ever cast, where I put out a notice for women in their 20s and I get someone wildly outside of the age range, like little Lily here applying for the project. It will happen on every project. The sorting tools are really nice because you're going to give Lily a quick thumbs down. She's never going to know that that happened. The actors don't see any of this part of the process. So feel free to use these sorting tools to help you make those good creative decisions. Move people over into the audition bucket, move them over into the callback bucket once you have the people you like from that. But use all of these tools to help you start to sort through actors and see who you're interested in seeing in an audition room. As we start to think through auditions, the big thing for you to know is that auditions are testing for skill, talent, skill, are they a good actor or not, and directability and personality. And you need both of those things for a really good, successful on-set experience, right? Skill and directability. And so you want to test for both of those things in your audition. So when you're prepping for your audition day, the first thing you're going to do is start choosing sides. Sides are just a very small portion of your script that you're going to read with the actors in the room. You want to aim for about 1.5 pages, maybe 2 pages. And then you want to send those sides to the actors themselves. You want to choose your sides kind of specifically. Audition sides, because it's just 2 people reading that are an action sequence or a fight scene, are not great for the audition room because your actors aren't going to be moving around. They're just going to be reading the lines with the actor or with their reader. The other thing you want to think about is who this character is. If you have a character who is super happy-go-lucky, nice to everyone, happy for 90% of the film, and they've got one scene where they're in a shouting match with their friend, that shouting match is probably not a good audition side because you want to choose sides that help you see what you need to see from that character on set. So you want to choose something where that character is a little bit more happy-go-lucky, right? Fight scenes make for super fun auditions, but you don't really want that if that's not really who your character is. So just choose those specifically. My next point here is about location. When you get back to in-person auditions, the big rule on location is that auditions should never happen in your home, no private residence. Right now, we're all doing auditions on virtual means, so that's much safer. But it's a big safety concern for me, especially with film students. You don't need 30 or 40 random strangers in and out of your apartment all day. So when we get back to in-person auditions, things like classrooms work really great because they're private enough that you get to focus with your actor, but they're public enough that everybody is in a safe situation. You also want to gather a bit of a team. Even if you're doing virtual auditions, having someone in your virtual audition room who's reading with your actors frees you up as the director. Your job as the director in the audition room is to watch actors and direct them. So you want to have someone else there reading lines with your actors, and that's going to free you up to be able to focus. It's really hard to read lines with actors and watch them and direct them all at the same time. So having a bit of a team with you is really, really helpful. Now it's a bit of a too many cooks in the kitchen. Sometimes student filmmakers are tempted to have their entire production team, but really what you need in this room is yourself, someone reading, and maybe one other member of your production team, especially if you're a director working with a producer. Having that producer in the room can be really helpful, but that should kind of be it. And then the last thing is to think through your schedule. You want to schedule auditions about 10 or 15 minutes apart. I would err on the side of 15 minutes for virtual auditions because that gives you the option to go through the material twice. In person, 10 minutes is usually fine. Virtually, I say 15 because it's a relatively new skill for all of these actors to join the virtual audition room. And so what we want to avoid, if at all possible, is having an actor join the room 5 minutes late and then they've eaten up 5 minutes of their audition time and you don't have enough time to work with that actor, right? 15 minutes gives everyone just a little bit of a buffer. The last thing to keep in mind is that audition days can be exhausting for you as a filmmaker. Take breaks. If you finish up one audition and you've got 5 minutes until the next one, get up, walk around, get something to drink. Understand that these are exhausting days. So you want to make sure that you're focused on what you're doing. You have the energy to get through the day. And so taking care of yourself kind of periodically throughout the day is really important. Now, the day of your audition, the biggest thing for you to understand is that actors are incredibly nervous to audition, even for an unpaid student film. Actors are coming into your audition room or your virtual audition room with a really high level of anxiety. Actors deal with a ton of rejection in their day-to-day life. The average actor auditions for 25 projects before they get a role, which is an awful lot of no per yes, right? So they're coming in with all of this anxiety. They assume that you already hate them, which we're working on breaking that in the actors to understand that, you know, they're in a room because someone's already interested. An enthusiastic greeting from you will go a long way. What we want to do is we want to bring that anxiety level down, because people who are insecure, people who are having high anxiety, don't take direction very well, right? So we want to be kind to actors because we're nice people and we want to have a good working relationship. But in a selfish filmmaker way, you're going to get much, much better auditions out of your actors if they feel like you like them, right? And that starts with a nice, friendly greeting. The second an actor joins your room, it doesn't have to be anything, you know, extreme. It's as simple as saying, "Hi, it's so nice to see you. My name's Christina. I'm the director on this project. Did you have any questions before we got started before we get started?" That's all it takes to remind the actors that they're there because you're already interested in them, right? You're choosing actors based on their profiles that you're already interested in, which is why it's so important to take care of yourself throughout the day, because as you get nervous or as you get stressed out, the actors aren't going to read this as, "This is a director who is nervous or stressed out." They're going to read it as, "This is a director who already hates me." And you're going to get very strange auditions out of people, right? Plan to work through your audition sides twice. And here's what I mean by that. Your actors are going to come into your audition room and they're going to read through the material with your reader the first time. No matter how good or bad that first read is, this is where you're going to step in and direct them. So if the first read is bad, occasionally that's because this is a bad actor. They snuck in, they fooled you with their profile, and they're not very good at what they're doing. That is incredibly, incredibly rare. It's way more likely that this is a good actor who didn't understand what you were looking for, or they didn't understand your sides. Remember, they're not giving the whole context for the script for your project. They're only seeing a very small portion of it. So they didn't understand the sides. Or even they understood the sides, they got what you were looking for, they got nervous and whiffed their first take. And it has happened on every project. So no matter how bad the first take is, if it's bad, you want to say, "That was awesome," because we're keeping that anxiety level low. And then you can start direct them and say, "This time we're gonna run through that again this time," and then you start to direct them, giving them things like context, using all of those great directing skills you're using in class, right? You're going to direct the actor and then let them read it again. The second take often is way better, either because the actor's not so nervous and they kind of got that first take out of the way and now they can focus on what they're doing, or they understand what you're saying. Sometimes I've been giving actors direction in the room saying, you know, this is the big marriage ending scene. Is this relationship going to make it or not? This is like that fight scene. And you'll see like the light go on above the actor's head of like, "Oh, that's what she's looking for." Letting them read again, no matter how good or bad that first take is going to tell you not just, you know, maybe this is a really highly skilled actor, but also how directable they are, which is why it's really important that even if the first read is awesome, you're still going to direct them to change something about their performance. Now you know that this is a skilled actor. They can give you a really good read on that scene. Now you get to see if this is going to be a good creative collaborator for you on set. That's what we're looking for in actors, is creative collaborators on set. So when an actor gives you a great performance, still direct them, have them change something about their performance and have them read again. And that way you're going to see them make all of those kind of micro adjustments to their performance throughout the scene. A good scene should be a whole series of choices by the actor, right? And so watching them make all of those adjustments to the choices, that's going to tell you not only is this a highly skilled actor, but this is a directable actor. And that is the magic combination for your set. That's really all that an audition day needs to be, is running through the scene twice, maybe 3 times. If I feel like an actor really just whiffed the first take because they were nervous, I'll let them go again, and then we'll kind of treat that as like the real first take. If that second take is good, then I'll direct them a little bit more and have them go again. It really should not take more than about 10 or 12 minutes, which is why that 15-minute mark is perfect. The mistake I often see young filmmakers make is that they want to go around and around and around and around with the audition material until they get to the performance they would want on set. But that's not really what we're doing in the audition room. We're just seeing if someone is skilled at what they're doing and a good creative collaborator for you on set. Is this someone that you've got good chemistry with? You have lots of time in rehearsals and prep and on the shoot day to get an actor to that final performance. So we're not looking for these like Academy Award winning performances in the audition room. Occasionally, actors will walk into the room and just knock it out of the park and give you that anyway. But don't feel like you need to go through the material 1,000 times. What that's going to do is it's going to put you behind. And the further behind you get, the more stressed you're going to get. And then the actors down the line are going to assume that you hate them, right? So we want to keep the day moving, keep everybody's stress level low. So often I'll go through the material twice. I'll ask the actors if they've got any questions about the project, and that's it for the audition day. You kind of close out of that and jump into the next audition. The only exception for this is if you need to see a skill on set. So something like your actor needs to be able to play the cello, right? Or your actor needs to speak a second language at some point in the film. That's when you're going to add an extra 5 minutes onto your audition day and have them demonstrate that skill into the audition. So do your regular audition first and then say, like we said in the breakdown, this character needs to be able to juggle. So we need to see you juggle a little bit to make sure that that's a skill you actually have. Actors are famous for saying that they have skills that they do not have. So you want to make sure that if you need to see a skill on set, you see a sample of it. If the actor can't do it in the room, we don't ask actors to do stunts. We don't ask actors to touch other people. So things like stage combat, skateboarding, riding a horse, if any of that is part of your film. Swimming is really hard to get a sample of in the audition room. Have the actor send you a video. They can send you a video right through the site, or they can shoot you an email with one demonstrating that skill if it's not something they can do in front of you. But if it's an instrument, give them a heads up when you send them the audition. Say, we want to see you play the cello. We want to see you sing. We want to see you speak French in the audition room. So just be prepared to do that on the audition day. If not, have them send you a sample. What you don't want is an actor, I've seen this happen before, where a filmmaker calls an actor and says, hey, we want to hire you. But by the way, this character juggles. Can you juggle? Every actor in the universe is going to say, yeah, no problem. And then they're going to frantically try to teach themselves how to juggle before your shoot date, right? Make sure that you have actors who already have the skill set that you're looking for. And then the same thing goes for audition days being exhausting. The same way they're exhausting for the actors, they're exhausting for you as a filmmaker. Take good care of yourself, take breaks when you need them. In the virtual audition tool on the site, you can actually set up your day so that you have 4 auditions in a row and then a 15-minute break, and then 4 more auditions. I can't recommend that highly enough. Building breaks into your day if you have the time to do so. It's just going to give you a chance to step away and come back refreshed and have a good interaction with the actors in the room. Any questions about any of that before I want to talk to you a little bit about the remote tools on the site, but in general, that's kind of the way that an audition day should go. Sure.
Yeah, and I apologize if you haven't gotten there yet in the presentation, but I know like because a lot of things are remote nowadays, one popular thing is like self-tapes versus like audition rooms. Is that something that Backstage does as well, or
it does? And I'll cover that for you in just a second, because I think self-tapes are a great tool, but I don't think they replicate an audition experience the way that you kind of need them to. So I'll talk about that in just a second.
Sure, thank you.
Of course.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
If I speak specifically about about the project of our 550, it's only allowed us 7 lines of dialogue. So we don't have much of a script to read with the actors. It's all
great question.
So yeah, you get the.
So you have a couple of options. For a project where an actor speaks very little, or a project like that where there's not a lot of dialogue anyway, the best thing I can tell you is write a page of dialogue. for these characters, as though they had some sort of conversation with someone in character, obviously something that shows you a little bit of what you want to see from that character. If they're, you know, a super confrontational, aggressive person, even if in your script there's only 7 lines of dialogue for that character to show that, write them a scene where they're confrontational and aggressive with someone else in their life or someone else they're interacting with, and use that as your audition material. You can do the same thing if your film is only 2 people and throughout the whole film they only have 7 lines of dialogue. Write them a slightly longer scene together that kind of gets the same gist. We do this all the time. If the project, you know, the script is super locked down, that's the new popular thing, is that no one ever gets to see the script for anything. We write scenes for our actors, or we use similar scenes from other projects. The only thing that I would caution you against is using a popular scene from like a film that's been made. What I see in that case is often actors giving you their, if you take, what's the scene that everyone wants to do? That scene from A Marriage Story where they're fighting in the apartment, right? Even if that's the exact kind of tone you need from your project, if you use an existing very popular scene like that, all that actor's going to be doing is giving you their very best Adam Driver impression. So instead of using something existing, it's worth the extra work to write a page and a half or a page worth of dialogue for your actors to read in the audition room. Does that help? Perfect. Okay, great. Let's talk about self-tapes for a second. So self-tapes have been around forever. They were used in the past just when an actor was maybe shooting another project or outside of the city and they couldn't get into a physical audition room. However, because of the pandemic, they're becoming increasingly popular. Every project I know uses self-tapes at some point in the process. If you've never heard of self-tapes before, the way that this works is that you're going to send the actor a request for a self-tape. And you can do this right through Backstage. You can do it through all of the other casting sites too, or if you're casting separately from any platform, you can do it right through email. You send them a request and you attach your sides as a PDF. Because they don't have the benefit of having you in person directing them, you're going to, in that message where you're inviting them to self-tape, along with things like, we need this self-tape back by X date. You want to give them a very clear deadline. You want to tell them the best format to get it back for you if they're not sending it through a site. You're also going to give them a little bit of context for the scene. We don't normally bother with that, you know, if we're just sending auditions for someone who's going to audition in front of you. But for a self-tape, you want to give them a little bit more context. So things like, this is the big relationship ending fight for this marriage, right? That's a good amount of context for an actor to see. Or this is a sci-fi space opera and all of these characters are having this conversation on a spaceship with aliens, right? That again is very important context for an actor. You're going to give them a little bit of context and send it off to them, and they're going to send it back. Now, if you're using Backstage for this, that video will land in their profile along with the rest of their media. It keeps it really organized for you. You can download it if you feel strongly about having it downloaded to your computer, but you don't have to. It doesn't have to take up any space on your laptop. The thing about self-tapes is that, like I said, you're not going to have any opportunity to direct your actors. I think self-tapes make for a really good first step. I think it helps you kind of narrow down the good actors from the bad actors, that skill level, but you're not given any opportunity to test for directability and personality with the self-tape. What I would recommend is use it to narrow people down and then take the people whose self-tapes you like and get them into some sort of virtual audition format. Whether that's a true virtual audition through the site, whether that's you know, a Zoom session where you're going to have actors come in, a 5-minute FaceTime, get a sense of their personality. Because Wade, for example, now I know Wade in person and he's a lovely guy, but Wade could send you the best self-tape you've ever seen and be a total jerk, and you just don't have time for jerks on your set, right? So you want to get a sense of his personality before you hire him. So I love self-tapes. I think they're a really useful tool. I just think they need to be your first step and not your only step in casting. But a really good way to kind of narrow people down if you know that you don't have time to audition a ton of people for each role. Did that answer your question, Aiden, about self-tapes?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, perfect. Now, if you're using Backstage to cast, we do have a virtual audition tool. And the way that that works is that you're going to send out your casting notice, go through the actors who apply, whether you have them self-tape first or not. you can kind of put all the actors that you like into your audition bucket and then set up a virtual audition schedule. I love this tool. I think it's incredibly helpful. It actually was on our product roadmap for about 2025. But when the pandemic started last year, we decided that that needed to be moved right up. And actually, they've put out a really beautiful piece of tech. So the nice thing about the Backstage virtual audition tool, rather than having you jump off platform and use Zoom or use FaceTime or whatever it is, first of all, it's incredibly secure. It's going through our platform. And so there's no chance of someone Zoom bombing your audition day or, you know, the talent bumping into each other. It creates a unique audition room for each actor. So if this actor's audition is running a little bit long and this actor happens to be 5 minutes early, they're not going to be in the same audition room. They're kind of put in two separate virtual spaces, right? The other really nice thing is that it's going to automatically record your audition room and save it to the talent's profile as a video. This, I can't stress enough to you how important it is to have some sort of video record, whether you jump off and use Zoom or not. Record all of your audition sessions. It's so easy to think that you're going to remember everything that every actor did and who you liked and who you didn't. But in reality, when we're auditioning, we're seeing a huge variety of performances. And you're going to like these small things about this person's performance and these small things about this person's. And it's so helpful to have a video record to go back to when you're making all of those decisions. When we get back to in-person auditions, I think this is even important there. You need to have someone in that room running a camera capturing the actor's auditions. It's especially important in person because auditions look, well, acting in general, look very different in person in front of you than they do on camera. And so you want to see what the camera is seeing because your project's going to live on film. It's also important for virtual auditions just because the audition process is exhausting and you're not going to remember everything. So the nice thing about the Backstage tool is that it's going to automatically record that virtual audition session for you, save it to the talent's profile the same way it would if they had sent you in a self-tape. Like I said, you're going to be able to really customize this calendar. You can set 20-minute sessions, you can set 15-minute sessions, all the way down to something like 5 minutes a piece. I advise against that because I think you're just going to get behind really, really quickly. Somewhere in the 15-minute range is ideal, but this is what your calendar is going to look like. And you can either autofill this, say, these are the actors I want to audition and hit autofill and it will kind of populate in there for you. Or if you're a little A-type like me, I like to see actors in a specific order. So you'll be able to just drag and drop them to specific audition times. But you can build out the schedule and say, I want to see 5 people at a time, and then I want a 15-minute break, and it'll build that in for you. This is what it'll look like when it's all set to go. Look for these little green check marks the night before your audition or even like the day before your audition. The green check mark means the actor is confirmed, they're attending your audition, you're on their calendar. If you don't see that, I think it'll show like a little orange envelope. That means that the actor has not seen the message or responded to the message yet. So the day before your audition day, go through your schedule, look at all the actors you've had come in. Anybody who doesn't have a green check mark, message them again. You want to get as many people into your audition room as possible so that you again have lots of good creative decisions to make down the line. And then when it comes time for your audition, let's say it's March 27th and we're auditioning Franklin, you're just going to click on this little purple camera icon. The way that this works, I think, is brilliant. The audition schedule is going to stay open in one tab of your browser. And when you click on the purple camera icon, it's going to open up the audition room in a separate tab. That way your schedule stays open all the time. You don't have to hunt for it in between people. You have your audition in this second tab. When it's over and you're done talking to Franklin, you'll just click out of that one and be right back to your schedule so that you can jump into the next room. Super, super simple to use. This is what the audition room looks like when you're in here. Now, I will say that it is difficult to have that same sort of chemistry with an actor in a Zoom room, but I think that you guys have the benefit of having done 2 years worth of Zoom all the time, every day for everything. So we've gotten a little used to what it looks like to have actors in a virtual setting. It's just important that you're as personable as possible because you want to help the actors know that you're going to be a good person to work with. But also we're trying to create as much of that in-person chemistry as we can. So it's going to look very similarly to Zoom. Like I said, it's going to automatically record it, but you have all those same options as far as turning your video on and off, your audio on and off. You can also chat with the actors. If there's some sort of weird tech issue, their camera's not working, their audio's not working, you can chat with them too. You'll open up this audition room. Like I said, you're going to greet your actors. You'll go through your material a couple of times. And then when it's all said and done, you can either click the hang up or click out of the tab altogether. It takes about 30 minutes for that video to process, and then it'll land in the talent's profile. It only records the actors. That's the other important thing for you to know. I know filmmakers can be a little camera shy. It's only going to record the actor side of it so that it will look essentially like a self-tape or like an in-person audition session. This schedule and this room, this is why it's so important to add people as a collaborator if you need them to join your audition day with you, because if they're not a collaborator, there's no way for them to see this schedule. So even if you're just going to have someone on your team join you as a reader for the day, add them as a collaborator so that they can see the schedule. They can jump in and out of all of these rooms. You'll see over on the left-hand side, this one was just my colleague Christine and our actor. But you'll see all of your production teammates that happen to be in the room with you. Last piece of advice about virtual auditions is when it comes time for the reading of the material itself, anyone who's not the actor or the reader should turn their video and their audio off.
I've been in
that just keeps the actor from being distracted. It keeps the actor and the reader kind of focused on each other. And again, we're going to create as close to in-person actor chemistry as we can between our actor and our reader. It's not going to be perfect, but until things are back to a point where people are comfortable with in-person auditions, this is really as good as it's getting. And I find that most actors by this point have had enough experience with remote auditioning that you're going to get some people who are good at kind of recreating that virtual audition setting. Before we jump into kind of hiring talent and that last stage of casting, does anyone have any questions about auditioning? Okay, we'll come back to time for questions at the very end. I'm actually going to stop sharing just for 1 second and talk about hiring actors. This is our big last step of casting. And I think the best advice that I have for you is, so you've had your whole audition day, right? You've seen a dozen actors for each of your roles. You are probably exhausted. You need to step away from the project for the night and not watch any of those audition tapes. It is so tempting to watch your audition tapes that night, but people who are exhausted historically do not make great decisions. And that's what we're doing right now, is we're going to make some big decisions. I think you should walk away from it for the night. The next day, when you're actually physically making the decisions, you're going to make a list of every character that you auditioned people for, all of the characters in your project, and give yourself a column for first choice, second choice, and third choice. And you're going to make all of those decisions right now. That way, if you call your first choice and they're no longer available, or something has come up, or they're having to quarantine for some reason, whatever it is, right? You don't want to have to go back and rewatch tapes to choose who your second choice is going to be, right? You want to be able to just move down the line and call your second choice for the project. The other thing to know is that the only people you're going to call are the people you're hiring. It sounds totally counterintuitive, and I'm sure for a lot of you, it feels very rude to have actors come in and audition for you and they'll just never hear from you again, but it's industry standard for a reason. A, it gives you the freedom to call someone and act like they were your first choice when they maybe weren't. If you call everyone else and tell them no, and then you call your first choice and they're not available, you suddenly have to call an actor and say, hey, our first choice said no, are you still free? Which is not a great way to start off that relationship. Instead, what you want to be able to do is move down the line. If your first choice says no, you call your second choice and you pretend that they were your first choice. So that's the first thing you're doing. The second thing is, like I said, actors deal with just a ridiculous amount of rejection day to day. And so where we can, we want to mitigate that. If they're called, we train actors that they go into their audition day, they do their very best work, and then they forget that that audition ever happened. If they get good news afterwards, great. But if you call every actor and remind them of every time you're not hiring them, we're shortening actors' careers by decades. So instead, you're going to make your list and you're going to move down the list and call actors to offer them the position. Now, if there was anything you were unsure of for your shoot when you started the casting process, you need to be sure of it when you call actors. Shoot dates, COVID testing dates, mask policies on your set, shoot locations, all of that needs to be figured out before you offer an actor a role. That way you can call them and say, hey, we need you on the 8th, 9th, and 10th we're shooting on the LMU campus, or we're shooting in Big Bear, but we're going to shuttle everyone up there, whatever the logistics are for your project. You want to have those in mind when you call your actor to offer it, because they need to know if they're actually free for your shoot dates, right? So if there's anything outstanding that you're still working on, make sure that that's something that you're aware of before you kind of jump into the process. The other thing is that with COVID, we want to be very clear with actors about what the COVID policy on your set is. Every set is slightly different, right? And especially because you're coming from a school, I'm guessing that your COVID policies are a bit tighter than the average, very quick commercial shoot or people shooting shorts. But whatever that COVID policy looks like, when you're hiring actors, you want to have a good, clear idea of it. Because right now the actors are on a really wide spectrum of comfort levels getting back to set. Some of them are so eager to work and they're ready to do whatever it takes to be back on set and back to work. Some of them are still very, very nervous. And so knowing that you want to be very clear about what your set is going to look like. What we really want to avoid is an actor walking onto your set and being surprised by anything. Now, whether that's, their wardrobe for the day. I always hear horror stories from actors who say, I walked onto set and I was handed a teeny tiny bikini and told that's your wardrobe for the day. That sort of thing should never be a shock. The same way, whatever your COVID policy on set, is everyone masked? Is everyone vaccinated? Is everyone, whatever it looks like, right? Make sure that that is really clearly communicated to the actors when they're hired. Especially if you're going to require things like testing beforehand or vaccine status beforehand, making sure they have a good understanding of that before they've agreed and said yes is really important. So just make sure that you have that in mind. The second thing about hiring actors is that from the point that you hire them, you call your first choice, they say yes. You're so excited to work with them. From that point to the second they step on set for the first day of the shoot, it is all about communication. So you're going to start that off by sending them the full script, by sending them, shoot location and shoot dates and yes, your guidelines for the school. All of that great information, send them right away as soon as you hire them. And then it's your job as the director to start the directing process right away. And that usually starts with calling your actors and saying, hey, we sent you over the full script for the project. Did you have any questions about it? Do you have questions about who your character is? Start working out all of those things the same way you're working out, the COVID policy and the location and the wardrobe, all of those logistics. Start working on character the second that your actors get hired. You want to talk them through backstory. You want to talk them through context and what that character wants and why that character is so angry at their mother, whatever it is, right, for your project. The goal here is that everybody gets to set ready to work. So if you have an actor driving to their first day of set and thinking, I don't really understand what I'm doing today, is my character angry? Is my character making jokes? That's not an actor who's preparing and getting ready to work, right? Because they're worried about things. The same way they're thinking, hey, I'm vegan and no one ever asked me if I was vegan, but I've been promised lunch on this set. That's an actor who's worrying about that instead of preparing to work. We want actors to walk on set ready to work. So the more of that kind of conversation, whether it's about the character, about the film, or about the logistics, wardrobe and lunch, and where they're going to park when they get to set, all of those logistics, we want to get those out of the way so that when an actor walks on set, they aren't thinking about anything except the character and the story and how they're going to work with you. I take this as far, I don't go through my whole shot list with actors, but if I know that the first thing we're shooting that day is a super emotional, difficult scene, I give actors a heads up on that too, so that they can spend that time getting set, preparing for that moment. If you know that you're going to work up to that throughout the day, awesome. But if you know that something in that day is going to be really difficult or challenging for an actor, the more prep you can give them on that, the better. And then they feel like they're a collaborator in the process and not that you're hiding things from them to make it difficult. Does all of that make sense? Awesome. The last thing about casting and working with actors is that anything you've promised actors as part of their, participation in your film, you have to get it to them in a timely fashion. I can't tell you how many times I hear from actors and they say, I shot this really rad student film and it's been 6 months and no one has ever sent me the footage. Don't make actors chase you for that, especially if you are paying your actors. they should get that payment the day they shoot, or at least 24 hours after. But if you make actors chase you for payment, chase you for footage, chase you for whatever it is that you've promised them, right? Part of what we're doing here is, yes, learning how to audition, learning how to work with actors, learning the process of having a professional actor on your set. But also, you're in a really great place where you can start building out a network of actors who like working with you. We see this in professional filmmakers all the time. They've got kind of a group of, I think Wes Anderson works with the same 10 people on every single project, right? You have the opportunity, because you're going to film school in the largest pool of talent in the world, to start that process now. To start having actors who love working with you as a director, so that when you step out of school and start your career in a real way, they have lots of like good experiences with you. They want to continue to be part of that network. If an actor has to chase you for payment or, you know, footage or whatever it is that you've promised them as part of your set, you're starting that as your reputation as a professional level filmmaker in Los Angeles, as opposed to, you know, Christina is rad and we like to work with her. All of that said, I think that the value in adding professional level actors to your work is so much higher than any amount of work that it takes to get there. I think that it's so well worth you guys kind of diving into the process and, you know, making those small mistakes, and make them now while you have the protection of the school. So that when you get to that professional level, you have your feet under you, you're comfortable with the whole process. I want to go through just a few additional resources that Backstage offers to students and emerging filmmakers. But before we get there, I know that that was just a ton of information thrown at you all at once. But does anyone have any questions about the process that I can answer before we kind of talk about other parts of our partnership with the school? Yeah.
Another question. One thing that, like, you know, of course, like, we're trying to come up with our production schedules and everything like that. What would you say is an ideal timeline for sending out some breakdowns, and then, you know, doing auditions and then hiring, and like just that general kind of timeline?
Absolutely. I think if you can give yourself, I know that often with students, you're working on really tight timelines, right? You don't get the assignment until you're a certain number of weeks out from time to time. But I think if you can give yourself between 4 and 6 weeks for the casting process, you're putting yourself in a really good position. Now, I work with casting directors and filmmakers all the time who put out a breakdown on Monday and the shoot is on Saturday. It's doable. It's just miserable. I think that it's a really difficult process. So if you can give yourself 4 weeks, that gives you time to put up your breakdown, right? Have a couple days for actors to start responding to it. If the actors don't respond, you have a couple of days to reach out to me and have me boost your notice so that we get a better actor response, right? You'll have time to start contacting actors and giving them that 48-hour window between contacting them and their audition day, right? You have a couple of days to run auditions. You have a couple of days to make decisions, and that still leaves you about 2 weeks out from your shoot, right? That gives you time to reach out to your actors and say, here's our shoot date. Here's what we need from you before you get there. Here's what that whole day is going to look like. And that gives the actors time. Every actor in LA that is doing, you know, short films or student films or emerging filmmaker work has another job, right? And so that gives them some time to get out of their other job, other commitments, other shoots that they may have going on. So I think if you can give yourself somewhere between 4 weeks for like a very normal project, if you've got upwards of 10 characters in your project, or you're casting for one of those categories that we said is a little trickier, if you can push that to 5 or 6 weeks, all the better. What we want to do is make sure that you have time for this to be a creative process and not a rushed, whoever is available, I will hire them process. That's kind of what we're hoping to avoid at all costs. So yeah, somewhere in that 4 to 6 week window is usually ideal. But like I said, if you find out today that your shoot date is February 8th, we can make that work for you. And I'm going to show you some resources to reach out to if you are working on a super tight timeline. But yeah, 4 weeks is ideal.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Oh, yeah.
So going back to the whole collaborator thing, so do we send those to the people who are auditioning in order for them to see the schedule, or is that just
No, that's a good question. So the actors, when you invite them to audition, will get a separate kind of link. The collaborators is just anyone on your team, right? So you don't want to add actors to that because it lets them see all of your process, everybody who's applied, everybody you've messaged, your collaborators can see the whole thing. So we don't want to add actors to that. But things like your readers or your production team, or, you know, if you have you're the director on the project and you have an assistant who's going to be reading with your actors in the room, right? They get added as a collaborator. But yeah, that's a great question. The actors, when you send them the invite, they will get a separate kind of link that just gives them their one link to join the audition room. Yeah, great question.
Christina, it's Deb. Are you going to do those drop-in sessions with that link like you had before?
Yes, I was just about to jump into that if there weren't any other specifics, but I love it. I love it. Yes. Okay, let's do that. And then we can do more questions at the end if we need to. Okay, so a couple of other resources. Like I said, I'm going to send you this as a PDF. There's kind of an easy walkthrough. I think that, you know, getting started on Backstage can be a little confusing, so I wanted to include that. The other thing is that if you are looking to add some crew experience to your, you know, resume as a filmmaker and you have the time around school, that link will help you sign up for a free crew profile. So if you are looking for PA work, you are kind of aimed at graduation and those first 2 film jobs afterwards, that's the link that you're going to use. If you have questions about either hiring crew or you start to fill out your crew profile and you don't know, I've included Jen's information. She's me, but for Backstage crew. Also some casting tips as far as, you know, mistakes to avoid, but it's all mostly things that we've covered here. And then the last thing is I just wanted you guys to have, I know the school has a very strict set of guidelines for you, and I absolutely advocate you guys following those, but I also wanted to include SAG's perspective. You know, what SAG, especially if you're using the student filmmaker agreement and you are looking for union actors, this is what SAG has said is safe on set and not. And so I think very well worth reading through to make sure that, you know, not only are you following your school's guidelines, but you're keeping yourself in line with the union as well. And then, yes, so a couple things for you. One, just a reminder of the promo code. The second thing is that I manage our relationship with LMU, and I am invested in you guys finding the right talent for your project. If you have posted on Backstage and it's not going well, you have questions about how to use the site, or you're not getting a good response, there's a variety of ways for you to get in touch with me and get my hands-on help. The first is that down at the bottom of the page is my email address. I am not precious about my email. I love helping film students. So if you have specific questions, whether that's, you know, on using the site, or, you know that you're going to be casting for one of those specific groups and you know you're going to need additional help, please feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, I love helping film students. You guys can email me at any time. And it is probably, because we no longer have a physical office for Backstage, the easiest way to get in touch with me is via email. The second thing is that I run a weekly drop-in session for student filmmakers. We call them the Student Filmmaker Office Hours, every Tuesday at 11, and it's a standing Zoom link. I know that reaching out one-on-one is not easy for some students. That's a very intimidating thing. If that's you, jump into the group sessions. It's open to film students kind of throughout the Western states, but mostly we get people from LA. It starts at 11 and I usually stay until 11:30, 11:45, stay longer if there's lots of questions, but if people kind of wrap things up, usually somewhere between 11:30 and 11:45 is when I jump off. I also understand that you guys are in class and you have complicated schedules. So if you're not free at that time, shoot me an email and I will set up a one-on-one session for you. The big thing to note here is that not just do we want you to feel comfortable using the site, but I want you to feel comfortable finding actors. And so if there are things that I can be doing via the site to help you do that, or outside of it, you know, I worked with a film student out of Santa Barbara a few years ago who cast all deaf actors for her project. And obviously that was a tricky thing to find. So in addition to Backstage, we were able to throw some additional resources at her, help her find the right people for a project. If that's you, I absolutely would encourage you to reach out, because there's just a myriad of ways that I'm happy to help. And then last thing is that promo code. Make sure you're not paying that $25 fee. We would infinitely rather that go towards lunch for your actors or your costume budget or whatever it is. It should not be coming to Backstage. It should be going into your project. All right. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing, but again, I will send this all over as a PDF, so don't feel like you have to be furiously copying anything down. Before we wrap up, did anyone else have questions about the casting process of the site, or your project in particular that I can help answer for you?
No?
Amazing.
So you guys are all set. Great.
Oh, wait, we got one.
Good.
It's debatable
Yeah.
if I have a question, because I already had one audition last week and I have another audition later today.
Awesome.
And the first person who I auditioned, he did not have any dialogue. He just needed to practice his facial expressions and reactions. And that's awesome. So kind of what I was thinking I was going to do today with the...
Yeah,
is that
absolutely.
something you can do? Because I only have one line of dialogue in my entire screenplay.
Absolutely. I think that when you have a project that doesn't have a lot of dialogue, that you can't pull 2 pages of sides, it's very much up to like what you need to see from the actors. If it makes sense to write them dialogue, awesome. But like you said, if it makes sense to have them kind of act through with no dialogue and see their reactions, see them like working through with whatever, if they're on a computer the entire time, whatever it is, right, for your exact project, if that works better and shows you what you need to see from the actors, absolutely, that's a great audition session. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. And then other question?
Yeah, so I had a question in regards to payments for paying the actors as well. So what I've noticed is that I feel there's more participation of actors if they're getting paid, but sometimes I'm trying to decide how much to pay the actors. So I was wondering if it would be okay to put TBD to be determined how much I pay them, or if it's better to have a set price at the beginning. And then off of that, do you feel there's still a lot of participation from people that are wanting to act if you just put like that it's a film, it's a student film, or is it kind of better to pay them a little bit more?
So I think that's a complicated question. I think that from what I've seen, you will get a good amount of response, especially because you're coming out of a program as great as LMU's. Actors know that footage is well worth their while. So even if you wind up not being able to pay your actors, or even, the other thing that I've seen is if you know that you're shooting kind of in Playa Vista or out of the city or something like that, meals, copy, credit, and $30 to help you pay for gas on the way here. That often is enough to kind of offset the cost of being in your film. If you can't pay actors anything, we've seen a really good response. The thing about LA in the last 2 years is that the amount of work for actors has gone down dramatically. And so our actors that are ready to get back to work, that are eager to be back on set, they are eager. And so you shouldn't have any problem finding actors if you find that in your budget that there's not any money to pay. I think that the pay TBD thing is only complicated because it keeps you from having a clear idea of your budget, right? So if you know that, because that can mean such a wide range of things, right? It can mean $30 for gas, TBD could be that. TBD could be $100 for the day. TBD could be $1,000 for the day. So I think it's better for you to figure out in your budget what you can afford to pay actors. Anything in the like $50 to $100 range is pretty standard for student films. If they are paying, that's kind of where things live. Obviously, yes, you're going to get more in participation from actors if there is a pay attached. What you should know about Backstage is that we consider something professional pay if it's minimum wage or higher for the number of hours that they're on set. And so our casting editors, even if you mark yourself as professional pay and listed as $50, they're going to adjust that for you because we think of professional pay as minimum wage and higher. But I just think figure it out for your film, what the budget will allow, and go from there rather than saying TBD. You may have an actor who seems really interested. You kind of fall in love with them in the audition process. You want to hire them. And for them, TBD is okay if it's $500 for the day, which you don't have the budget for, right? So I think setting that ahead of time, and then what I have seen student filmmakers do is if they put out that first notice, they're not getting the response that they want, and they are able to figure it out in the budget to kind of bump that pay up, we can re-release your notice with the higher pay and kind of go from there. Does that make sense?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and can I add, I know somebody, I know Shady, you have a comment, but I want to put this into context. Minimum wage is $15 an hour. To ask somebody to work 10 hours, actually it's time and a half after 8, but forget that, is $150, right? So that is, just think about what they could be doing some other, I do recommend that when you can, you put together your budget and consider paying actors, okay? I think you will get more of a response. You know, I'll take Christina's professional opinion on that. And it does seem that you could be saying, listen, it's a small project, my first year graduate project, so I'm not able to pay, but always consider gas money, these sorts of things. You really want to at least give them a little bit for their time. They're not out of money by coming to you, right? They're not out of money, especially if you're kind of a little further away, you know, if you're shooting a little further away. We're not doing out of the zone for the 550s, but if you're shooting far away, you want to alert them to that. You want to let them know, that you would take their gas receipt, fill up their tank. That's what you're going to be able to do. And if that's all you can do, that's fine, but make it very, very clear. TBD would not be my choice, as Christina said. You really want to say, I know my budget, I know what I'm doing, you know, I've set this up and here's what I can afford. And you just lay it out.
Absolutely. I also think that it's well worth thinking about it from the perspective of, you know, when you're not a film student anymore, paying actors is going to have to be a standard part of your budget.
Yeah.
And so learning how to factor that in now, I think is going to be helpful for you.
Yeah. Shady.
Just a quick question, sorry. So if my film has like kind of a hug or something like this, is that something should I write in my description? Like it's no nudity, nothing, like no nudity at all, just like regular hug?
I think that, you know, pre-COVID, I would have said, don't worry about that. I think so in the COVID era, anytime an actor is going to have to be in like close personal contact with someone else, it's worth mentioning in your description. We'll have to hug another actor is the way I would say that. Obviously, if there's anything like a kissing scene or a physical fight scene, you want to give them a heads up on those things, of course. Pre-COVID, I wouldn't have worried so much about a hug. I would assume that actors think that's kind of standard. But now that we've kind of got this idea about having to be that close to another performer, yes, absolutely. I think I would put that in the role description, say, we'll have to hug another actor on set. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Of course. And something to keep in mind, anytime now an actor is going to have to physically interact with another actor as part of the shoot, something to keep in mind is walking through exactly what that looks like, choreographing that exactly to make sure that your actors feel safe in that situation, whatever it looks like, whether it's stage combat or a romantic scene. You just want to make sure that actors are not ever put in a position where they feel like they're already on set and they have to do something that they're not comfortable with. So anytime you've got some sort of physical interaction, make sure that that feels choreographed, because I know that it feels opposite, right? As artists, we want something to feel very organic, but the best way to make sure your actors feel safe going into that organic space is to start with it very well choreographed and let them kind of go from there. Cool. Any other questions before we wrap? I do know that that was a lot of information all at once. And so questions will come up as you're working through the process. You know, you'll kind of run into one thing or another. I just can't encourage you enough to reach out if that's you. If you've got questions, if you need help, whatever ways I can help, I'm happy to do. So let me know.
Yeah, I got a quick question.
Oh, sure.
Since I know this is a recording, will we have access to look back into this, or did you say earlier we're only going to be emailed a PDF of that presentation?
The recording, yeah, we can put this recording. I think, who did you pop this recording, Sebastian? So you started the recording. We'll get it dropped down, and then we'll make sure that we get it onto our casting resources in the handbook. I put in a lot of links on this presentation, and you will note that 95% of them are in the handbook. So please keep referring to that. And they even have best practices, so you know, of how to talk to actors and so on. So if you forget, you can always go back there. But I think it's kind of natural, you know, it's just being open and on, you know, open and clear with actors.
Yes.
Clear of your
Absolutely.
expectations and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for having me back in. Again, someday we'll be back on your beautiful campus doing this, but
both
hopefully
campuses. You used to
that's
come to
right.
both campuses. Yeah.
Oh, I miss that so much. We'll get there. We'll get there.
I know.
In the meantime, if there's anything either from the student side or Laura and Deb, if there's things I can be doing to help support the program, just give me a shout. I promise to try never to say no.
Christina, thank you for always being a great resource for us and providing this service for our students. We really appreciate it.
Of course, I will send you over that PDF in just a few minutes then.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Have a great
Thanks
weekend,
so much.
everybody.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.